They thought they had escaped the monarchy, escaped the rules, escaped the scrutiny, and escaped the consequences. But according to whispers growing louder behind palace walls, the real crisis isn't what Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have already done to the royal family. The real crisis is what happens when the money finally stops flowing. And if the rumors, reports, and royal insiders are even partially correct, that moment may be closer than anyone wants to admit. For years, critics have accused King Charles of being weak when it comes to Harry. Every headline, every interview, every documentary, every public attack against the monarchy seemed to raise the same question. Why doesn't the king finally shut the door? Why doesn't he strip titles? Why doesn't he enforce consequences? Why does Harry appear to keep getting away with things that would end the careers of almost anyone else connected to the crown? But what if everyone has been looking at the situation backward? What if Charles isn't being soft? What if he's terrified? Not terrified of Harry himself, terrified of the bill that could eventually land on the palace doorstep. The palace, according to royal observers, may not be worried about Harry going broke tomorrow. The concern is much bigger. The concern is what happens when the financial machine that has powered the Sussex brand begins slowing down beyond repair. Because once that machine stalls completely, the royal family may find itself facing a public relations disaster far worse than anything seen so far. Think about the pattern. The massive deals that once looked unstoppable are no longer creating the excitement they once did. Projects announced with enormous fanfare have struggled to maintain momentum. Media partnerships that once promised unlimited opportunities now seem surrounded by questions. Each announcement appears smaller than the last. Each launch creates less buzz than expected. Each new venture seems to generate more skepticism than celebration. And that's where palace anxiety reportedly begins. Because maintaining the Sussex lifestyle is not cheap. Very expensive security, a sprawling California estate, staff, travel, legal battles, public relations operations, brand maintenance. The image of global celebrity comes with a global celebrity price tag. And while headlines often focus on family drama, insiders increasingly focus on mathematics. Simple mathematics, money coming in, money going out. And according to many commentators, those lines may be moving in opposite directions. The more you examine the timeline, the stranger it becomes. When Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal duties, the move was presented as a bold leap toward financial independence. Supporters celebrated it as freedom. Critics called it reckless. But nearly 6 years later, the question hanging over everything is impossible to ignore. Has independence actually delivered what was promised? Or has it created an expensive trap? Because every commercial venture now appears connected to the same underlying challenge. The Sussex brand requires constant visibility, constant relevance, constant attention. And attention is a dangerous addiction. The moment attention drops, opportunities shrink. The moment opportunities shrink, revenue becomes uncertain. And the moment revenue becomes uncertain, pressure starts building. That pressure appears everywhere. A new product launch, a new social media appearance, a carefully timed family photograph, a new statement, a new interview, a new controversy. Everything feels connected. Everything feels like part of a larger effort to keep momentum alive. And the palace is watching very carefully because there is another uncomfortable reality nobody wants to discuss publicly. Harry is not just any celebrity. He is the king's son. That fact changes everything. If a Hollywood star experiences financial problems, it becomes entertainment news. If the son of the British monarch experiences financial problems, it becomes a constitutional embarrassment. The headlines would be brutal. The symbolism would be devastating. The institution would inevitably be dragged into the story. And that is exactly what palace strategists reportedly want to avoid at all costs. Meanwhile, another controversy keeps resurfacing. The children. Every time Prince Archie or Princess Lilibet appear in public discussions, debate erupts almost instantly. Supporters argue that Harry and Meghan are protecting their privacy. Critics argue that selective appearances are being used to maintain public interest while controlling the narrative. The contradiction has become impossible for commentators to ignore. On one hand, there are repeated warnings about privacy and media intrusion. On the other hand, carefully curated glimpses continue appearing when they generate attention, and every appearance sparks another round of headlines, another round of clicks, another round of debate, another round of publicity. Coincidence? Or strategy? That question keeps surfacing because the timing often appears too perfect. Whenever criticism intensifies, a fresh distraction seems to emerge. Whenever difficult questions begin gaining momentum, public attention suddenly shifts elsewhere. Maybe it's coincidence, maybe it isn't. But observers are noticing the pattern, and so is the palace. Because beneath every controversy lies a much larger issue. The royal family's greatest asset has never never been money. It has never been castles. It has never been jewels. It has always been trust. Trust that royal titles mean something. Trust that royal standards apply equally. Trust that the institution follows rules. Yet every time Harry and Meghan continue using royal connections while publicly distancing themselves from royal responsibilities, critics argue that trust weakens a little more. The damage isn't dramatic, it's gradual, slow, quiet, like water wearing a waystone. And according to growing reports, Prince William sees that danger more clearly than almost anyone. Because while Charles may be focused on avoiding a future crisis, William appears focused on stopping an ongoing one. Two different approaches, two different fears, two different visions for protecting the monarchy. And somewhere in the middle sits Harry and Meghan, continuing to generate headlines, controversies, questions, and speculation with almost every move they make. But the deeper palace fear isn't simply about money. Money is only the symptom. The real danger is what years of unresolved conflict, unchecked branding, and growing public skepticism could eventually do to the monarchy itself. Because while headlines come and go, institutions survive or collapse based on credibility. And credibility is exactly where this story becomes explosive. Every week seems to bring another controversy, another social media debate, another royal connection being leveraged, another public contradiction that leaves observers shaking their heads. Critics increasingly argue that Harry and Meghan continue benefiting from royal status while simultaneously criticizing the very institution that created that status in the first place. Supporters call it unfair criticism. Opponents call it hypocrisy. Either way, the conversation never stops. And that constant conversation creates a problem for Buckingham Palace. The monarchy operates on symbolism. Titles matter because people believe they matter. Protocol matters because people respect it. Tradition matters because people trust it. But what happens when those symbols are repeatedly used in commercial settings? What happens when royal connections become part of marketing strategies, brand launches, product promotions, and media campaigns? According to many royal insiders, that question is becoming harder to ignore. Behind closed doors, William reportedly sees the situation through a very different lens than his father. Charles appears focused on preserving peace and preventing future financial disasters. William appears focused on preserving authority. To him, according to countless royal commentators, the issue is no longer personal, it's institutional. Because rules that aren't enforced eventually stop being rules. And once the public starts believing certain people can ignore consequences while others cannot, confidence begins eroding. Slowly at first, then all at once. That's why every unchallenged controversy matters. Every disputed title usage, every royal association, every unanswered question, every apparent exception. Each one may seem small individually. Together, they create a pattern. A pattern William reportedly believes threatens the monarchy's long-term credibility. Then there are the charities. What once appeared to be one of Harry's greatest strengths has increasingly become another source of uncomfortable headlines. Allegations, disputes, sponsorship concerns, leadership questions, legal battles, criticism from former supporters, the list keeps growing. And while some controversies may ultimately fade away, the damage often occurs before the facts are fully understood. That's the cruel reality of modern media. Perception moves faster than truth. The moment a scandal appears, reputations suffer. And because Harry remains connected to the royal family in the public imagination, every controversy eventually circles back toward the crown. The palace understands that. William understands that. Charles understands that, which makes the current strategy even more fascinating. Because despite everything that has happened, despite documentaries, memoirs, interviews, accusations, family feuds, and public attacks, the door has never been fully closed. The channel remains open. The possibility of future reconciliation remains alive. The safety net remains somewhere in the background. Why? Because the alternative may be even worse. Imagine the nightmare scenario palace planners reportedly fear. Financial pressures intensify. Commercial opportunities continue shrinking. Public interest declines. The brand loses momentum. Costs remain high. Income falls lower. Suddenly, a couple who built a global lifestyle around visibility faces difficult choices. Sell assets? Downsize dramatically? Request support? Every option creates headlines. Every headline creates scrutiny. Every scrutiny creates political questions. And once those questions begin, they become almost impossible to contain. That is why, according to many observers, Charles continues walking a tightrope. He cannot completely embrace Harry. He cannot completely abandon him either. Every move carries consequences. Every decision creates new risks. The tragedy for the monarchy is that time may not actually be solving the problem. Time may simply be making it larger, because every passing year increases the distance between public expectations and private realities. Every passing year creates new controversies. Every passing year adds another layer to a story that refuses to end. And that's why why the palace remains trapped. Not because they don't see the danger, not because they don't understand the damage, but because every available solution carries a cost. The monarchy has spent centuries surviving crises by buying time. Time allowed scandals to fade. Time allowed emotions to cool. Time allowed circumstances to change. But this crisis is different because the fuel driving it never seems to run out. The headlines continue. The speculation continues. The branding continues. The arguments continue. And somewhere behind palace walls, officials reportedly continue asking the same question that has haunted this story from the very beginning. What happens when the strategy of waiting finally reaches its limit? Because if the reports are correct, if the financial concerns are real, if the institutional damage continues accumulating, then the final chapter of this saga has not yet been written. In fact, the most dramatic chapter may still be ahead. And that's exactly what makes the palace nervous. Not what Harry and Meghan have already done, but what happens next.